We'll see how that happens. If they do, they'll get the grilling for being late.
Sit in order here.
The topic of this one here, meet the customer, not the same as the old customer. We've really talked about this all day. It's come up, both deliberately and organically in all the conversations. And that is that it's not just as simple as welcoming back our top customers that were our top customers at the end of 2019 or beginning of 2020. There's, it looks very, very different now. There's, I can't remember who it was that made the anecdotal comment about lots of families on planes, earlier in the sessions. It is. There's a lot of VFR, visiting family and relatives traffic out there. There's a lot of leisure travel. There's a lot of infrequent travel. Business travel that's out there tends to be what we used to refer to as the mid-tiers. Your SMEs, your self-funded travelers. The managed corporate is the segment that's lagging behind. So how do we as program managers, how do we view that? Firstly, is it an accurate statement? Secondly, how do we approach it? How do we deal with it? And how do we, adapt our programs to make sense accordingly? Scott.
Thank you very much, Dave. Great introduction. It's great to be back with you guys and to have such a great panel. Matt's going to join us in just a minute. I've been doing some teaching, and it's very interesting. As you know, in universities, there's class of 2019, class of 2020. The class of 2019 is going to be very different in the loyalty space than the class of 2022 or 2023. So we're going to look at loyal travelers, how that's changed, and also how programs generate loyalty. I want to start by taking a look back at creative things that were done over the last couple of years to deal with what's the population of your elite ranks and also how you generate loyalty among your customer base, and then really move forward into what we're facing going ahead. So let me introduce the panel. Matt Vaccarella is the Senior Director of Loyalty and Strategy for Radisson Hotels. You heard from Matt earlier. He's a veteran of several hotels, IHG, Starwood, Shangri-La, and also several airlines. Corbitt Burns, my neighbor in Dallas, is Director of Loyalty, Partnerships, Payment Products for Southwest Airlines. I think about 10-year veteran of Southwest and other companies before that. Brad Anderson, the Senior Director of Hilton Honors Strategy and Reward Products. And before Hilton, I think you were at Deloitte?
Yes.
Yep. And Brian Schreiber is Director of Loyalty at Porter Airlines. Before that, Air Canada, Points, and others. Very distinguished panel. I'm thrilled to be with you guys, and I think this is going to be a fascinating discussion. So let's start with the shock of the last couple of years and talk about what worked and what didn't work. What were the surprises that you encountered as you went through the pandemic?
Yeah, happy to start a bit. I think we were all a little bit surprised with the global pandemic in 2020, but I think really what's been most important is just engagement and relevancy. So I'll give you one story that we've done. Air travel, hotel travel shut down in March and April. One thing we look to is our partners and some things we can do that are creative. So one thing that we did when Disney Plus, if you all remember, that was new, we did a partnership with them for July 1st to July 4th. We actually partnered with them to launch when the Hamilton came on their platform. So, if people aren't traveling, staying, that's where we got super creative. And obviously happy to talk about all of our status and stuff we did, but yeah, just one example of creativity to engage.
Brad, was there anything in particular that didn't work?
I think trying to speak to customers when they weren't ready in some ways. So understanding, the moments at hand, right, when travels come back. So where we would talk to a customer today is very different than you would talk to them in March of 2020. So I think it's just a matter of, I don't know if Hilton's done, a lot of things I would change, but that relevancy of communication is super critical because not everyone's in the same space of coming back to travel.
And Corbitt, There was a time when I remember talking to people at Southwest, and there was zero revenue coming in. There were no tickets being sold.
That's right.
You were indeed a loyalty company that happened to be running an airline.
Yeah.
What did you change? What did you do differently?
So I think building on a lot of what Brad mentioned, and then thinking about some of the threads from the earlier discussions, two things. We elected to communicate to our members in ways that there were probably a couple of things we could have done differently. I think timing and some of the campaigns we ran that would have required activity. We said, hey, we need, get on the plane and X number of things over X number of period of time, and these things would occur. You could requalify for status or get multiples of points. Those in the early on weren't as effective. So to a certain degree, it addresses what you mentioned when we had 0 passengers on our planes, or it was just Brad flying back and forth with a full flight crew. So we tested and learned that really quickly, and so. What wasn't a surprise, though, is the resiliency of our program. So our members, our core population, as I'm sure many of those in the room here, it did shrink. It contracted quite a bit. But the richness and the value that remained, if you think about in the river and the silt analogy, the richness of our co-brand program just maintained its resilience and helped us truly persevere through the pandemic. And those members have stayed engaged at just record rates through the pandemic. And have continued to create and generate incremental profitability through the recovery, through elevated point balances, accelerated redemption behavior. So it's been, it was just fascinating to work through that whole thing.
Matt, how did you approach it?
Yeah, it was interesting because we kind of had a double whammy. We separated from the rest of the world, if you remember that, and became an independent America's loyalty program. So we actually had something to talk about besides the pandemic, which was re-educating and reintroducing a new loyalty program and just reassuring our members that, hey, when you're ready to travel again, we have a brand new program for you. And as that program evolved and has evolved over the past year, introducing new features and becoming a little bit more flexible to our members and then also to our owners and our franchisees, which was important, is just the more flexible we were with this new program. And so for that, it gave us a little bit more of something else to talk about, but we were flexible. We tried to reassure members, as we all did, that once you're ready, we're here for you. And we were a little bit more generous than we had been, and I think that was appreciated. And things are starting to bounce back. We also, unlike some of the other hotel brands, we're not a business. The majority of our hotels are not business hotels. This is one of our business hotels, but we're tier 2 or suburbs or further out. So we were actually impacted less because we didn't get hit with the business travel downturn, and we came back faster than the business travel sectors did. And so for us, we felt a little less pain, I should say.
And Brian, I know you're relatively new to Porter. Porter actually shut down during the pandemic. So you really, if there was a loyalty program, there was not an airline. Was there anything done with the loyalty program to keep people interested in Porter somehow?
I think we did our best. I mean, as you say, we fully shut down for 18 months. Strategic decision that we made, looking around at our competitors, seeing that they were losing millions of dollars a day to maintain some level of presence in the market, but with empty planes or being at minus 90-something% of seats or revenue in the market. So we went into the pandemic very coincidentally, but very, very happily with a very strong balance sheet. And so our decision to shut down was deliberate. But you're right, we did the things that we felt that we needed to do, like everyone in the room, in terms of extending status, waiving expiry policies, things like that. So we had reasons to communicate with our members to make sure that they knew that their points were safe, that their status that they had earned was safe. But it was a challenge, I would say, and perhaps easy in a way. We had and our program is very simple, where you earn for flights and you redeem for flights. We don't have an extensive network of partnerships or co-brands or anything like that. So, maintaining engagement and interest in the program was a challenge, but at the same time, we had we had nothing to offer. And so it was sort of understood that we're shut down. If you need to travel, there are other ways, and we look forward to having people back on board when it's time.
So what did you learn internally about the value of a loyalty program to the company?
From a Radisson perspective, the separation of the programs was really a benefit for us. The Americas executive team is very pro-loyalty, and so we went from a global organization that had a different philosophy on loyalty to an America's loyalty program that gave us 100% backing and the flexibility and the funds we needed. So we were very lucky on that.
For us, I think I mentioned it a second ago, but I think at the beginning of the pandemic and through the first year and a half, it went from being a very powerful, quiet, high-performing engine to, just pushed or pulled to center stage. And a lot of the folks that are part of that are here with me today. We're doing weekly executive reporting to our, everyone with an E and a C in front of their name, because we were generating value, life-sustaining value while the patient was open on the table. We weren't too far away from where Brian and Porter were. So that was, it was very energizing, but also incredibly intense just to maintain that cadence and communication and visibility to how things are going on a daily basis. It actually forced us to create more accelerated reporting and visibility mechanisms so that we did know on a daily basis how are things going in the core loyalty program. But what we also learned is, and what has changed through the pandemic, is how much more the enterprise across the board is calling upon loyalty to leverage the program to help grow different aspects of our business, whether it's our cargo business, for our managed travel business, our leisure business. It's being used in ways that were never even contemplated prior to the pandemic, and that's great because it I think speaks to what we've talked about in this program so far is points matter, and they're accumulating balances with our members, and we're finding that a lot of the campaigns we're running that are points-based campaigns, they're some of our best campaigns that run. In some cases, even better than a fare sale, that we had last week or 2 weeks ago.
And so when you say points campaign, you mean sales on...
Yeah, double points campaigns or redemption sales was a new mechanism and tactic that we hadn't really used before. But the example there is we identified through our data science team that the average member's point balance was double digits elevated, and it was continuing to grow. And so we built campaigns to promote, based upon the member's point balance, what kind of discount we could offer them if they were to redeem, because we had available capacity on the plane. And so I said, hey Scott, we see you have 175,000 points. How about a 20% off discount code for your next redemption, to get you back on the plane? I think it was Ms. Corbin earlier that said, that matters to us. The sooner we can get you to re-engage through redemption, the more likely you are to come back.
Yeah, go ahead, Scott. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, it's interesting to me, several airlines basically monetized their programs, borrowed against their programs heavily. The Southwest was not one of them, but it became very clear what the value to the business was of the loyalty program. And you saw that, Brian, at Air Canada, where Aeroplan was sold off and bought back. I am curious about whether there's more pressure inside because you're running a business that is in some cases worth more than the airline itself.
Oh, I can answer that one, unless you want to take that one. No, it did. It brought probably, so when United, American, and Delta all collateralized their programs, it created a firestorm of comparable modeling on our side. We had the fortune of having a fortress balance sheet. We didn't need the cash, and so we didn't have to do that. But it did. we went through multiple rounds of valuation. Every time a new event occurred, we would go model against their valuation, determine, just we had a strong understanding. It really didn't change our strategies, but it kind of gave us a strong sense of confidence and resiliency that yes, we are profitable as an airline with and without the loyalty program.
I will say that every time one of those news reports came out about somebody leveraging their loyalty program, we didn't, but it just helped us because management stood up and said, it made it harder in some stances because they're like, you've got to match that, but it also made it raised our level of awareness within the organization and on what we could be, for sure.
Brad, internally, anything for you?
Yeah, I was going to add some thoughts too. I think the good news is that pre-pandemic, at least the leadership of the company has doubled down on loyalty, and our business is 60 to 100 hotels in the world. So we know we need scaled customers. We need to move beyond just our super elites, which are super critical. So I'd say there's been a lot of buy-in, way before the pandemic. So it was less of a selling the value of the loyalty program. And one pro of that was, our CEO pushed us to get to 100 million members by the 100th anniversary, which was 2019. So we had a much more dual strategy as a company to engage with lower frequency, lower tier folks that I can talk more about, while also taking care of our most elite guests. So we kind of moved to that strategy. So, the value story is not as hard internally.
I think at Porter, we're on that path, I'll say. As we look to have expansive, explosive growth of the airline, starting later in this year, when we start to bring jets on board. Traditionally we've been a very regional player in the Northeast. We're at 17 destinations today, a handful in the northeast of the U.S. and Eastern Canada. As we bring Embraer jets into our fleet and we start to grow to even more markets, and therefore being able to compete on a much different level with WestJet and Air Canada. I think that's where loyalty internally is going to start to grow in lockstep with the growth of the airline, of the enterprise itself. And so I think that's where the value is going to start to, we're going to start to see it, and therefore those conversations internally, I think there's going to be a shift of the importance and what loyalty can do and what it can bring to the enterprise as we continue to grow.
We talked this morning about the magic of travel rewards. I'm curious what you learned about your customers the last couple of years that might translate into today's loyalty world. We're going to talk more about what kind of customers you have today, but let's start with just what you learned about your customers in general that may have lasting impact.
Yeah, it would depend on the customers we're talking about to a certain extent. I think this morning we were talking about our elites, and with folks not traveling as much for business, I think folks that had points and were using them for leisure, I think it also just pointed so much that moment of redemption and that moment of payoff, even if it's from a pre-pandemic time, was so absolutely critical. So I think we were trying to think about, what are ways to heighten that moment for our members, and we've been doing more of it through technology. So I think some folks were talking about upgrades earlier. We recently rolled out an automated upgrade process where you get notified 72 hours ahead of time. You're not at the front desk hoping and, trying to go through that experience. So I think, one is that moment is so critical. And then secondly, technology and the customer experience can also be as important as points in some ways. So we've tried to think about both of those things as it comes through.
Interesting.
One thing that pops out for me is that changed almost on a macro level in the travel industry through the pandemic was the need for flexibility. I think, irrespective of hotel, airline, or car, everyone seemed to get to the same finish line or starting line on what your policies need to be, flexibility policies, whether it's cancellation or rebooking, reaccommodation, things like that. So that has, there was so much distance between Southwest Airlines and all other major carriers when it came to flexibility pre-pandemic, and then they all zoomed up to where we were, and so that just has created this new, I believe, it's now table stakes that especially in the loyalty and the award space, there just needs to be an inherent flexibility in policies. So, but that creates a secondary challenge for us as an airline, but also as a loyalty program, is how do then we create that next level of differentiation that we just lost? And so that's something we're still working through, but that I think is something that really solidified in a pandemic and has become the new normal.
And I think, I mean, one of the big things we did was we doubled down on value. We are an extremely valuable loyalty program to start with, but with, I think David alluded it to this morning, the introduction of a new award chart, which created even more value. And what that did was build more trust. We saw more redemptions, new redemptions with that, because not only did we have a fixed award chart, but we had that downward-only dynamic award pricing. And that really showed our members, and they really resonated, that message resonated with them to say, hey, we've got the capacity, we have the space, we want to pass that value on to you. And they've grabbed on it, and it's been a real plus for us. And it's allowed us, and I think it was Robin who said, when things aren't good, you try new things. And that was something that we brought up and we launched. It was a lot of work to get that passed through 600 franchisees. But once we did it, it can open their eyes to say, hey, let's not stay with the status quo all the time. Let's not follow the big boys all the time. A lot of this pressure to do 100% dynamic pricing because all the other big boys were doing that. We didn't, and now they say, hey, we don't have to follow. Go ahead and try something different, try something new. So that flexibility is something that's great, and we'll carry forward with that.
Good.
I think from a Porter perspective, it's really cemented that what we have to offer our customers in terms of the service that we offer and our strategic advantage of our home base have really come true. And so our home hub is the Toronto Island City Airport. So we don't operate out of Pearson today. We operate out of the city airport, where you can literally walk to the airport. When I go to the office, I get off the streetcar and I walk to the airport, which is almost unheard of. And even flying here yesterday, I live relatively close, but from the time the Uber picked me up, it was 40 minutes while I was waiting at the gate. There was nothing, there was no lines. It's a very small terminal. It's very easy to navigate. And almost every day for the last, I don't know how many months now, we're hearing about issues that we're seeing definitely at Pearson in terms of staffing shortages with security, and we're seeing issues with the airport authority, we're seeing issues with customs immigration. So the airport environment, in a bigger airport environment like Pearson, it's a mess right now. And so we realized that while we weren't operating for 18 months, but people are coming back. They really, really are valuing what we have to offer. And so I think we always knew that, but what did we learn about people during the pandemic was that I think that they missed us, and we're really, really glad to have people back and to be able to have this, this very strategic and very sort of structural advantage of a very small airport and very engaged and high service giving staff.
I think we can be pretty certain nobody has ever walked to O'Hare. But that does raise the question of, are travelers different today? And I'm curious what you think. Is it the same customer with different spending habits, different travel habits, or has your customer pool changed?
Yeah, I would say it's definitely a mixed question, I'll give an example of maybe a couple new examples of customers, but I think it's truly, there's been leisure travels before, family travel. It's really the scale and scope, I think, coming out of the pandemic, and kind of how do you use the loyalty programs and have partnerships like Amazon for us that are relevant to folks that may only stay 3 to 5 times a year, and make sure you get something out of the points that you're earning. There are, I guess I would ask the question to the group, how many people have had a pet through the pandemic? Got a new fur baby? Okay, so I think there is one area that's kind of interesting with this pet ownership. Slightly is a new thing, and a few of our brands have fully moved to pet friendly, so anyone can bring their pet to Homewood or Home 2. So those are some examples of how do you speak differently to someone who has a pet now. So those are kind of micro examples, but there's always evolving customers. It's nothing really new.
So did you change pet policy because of pandemic?
Changed pet policy at our hotel, at our full across our brand, so it's a brand standard now.
And
so
we did the same.
There you go.
We promoted a lot more than we used to.
Exactly.
And it's made a difference. My marketing team constantly telling me that people choose hotels because they're pet friendly, and more people, and our hotels are drive-through hotels. So, and we've seen it, that was something where, hey, let's try it. Is it going to stick? Yeah, do it, and it's done.
Interesting.
Yeah, our customer mix has certainly changed through the pandemic. We had probably, with most of us in the room, our business travel segment has not fully recovered. We're still materially down from that. But what we have seen, not anomalously, but a very strong trend is the growth of new members or new passengers that haven't flown with us, or at least haven't flown with us in a while. It's a very large percentage now. And they are skewing to be slightly younger, and the average passengers per trip is a little bit larger, right? So we're picking up new families that just haven't flown Southwest or haven't flown a lot in a while. And so that's good for us, right? It's helping us grow our membership base, grow our passengers in the program, our members in the program. But we also, interestingly enough, we see different member types by form of payment. So that has been since payments falls into the world of loyalty at Southwest. We have an installment product that we offer through Uplift. We support PayPal. Obviously, we have a burgeoning co-brand program, and the demographics and the types of members that engage with different forms of payment has been really insightful to help us understand the different retargeting strategies, or how do we acquire new members in that segment, and we can have learned to leverage payment capabilities to grow our book of business and to grow our membership base.
Those new customers, do they automatically sign up for the loyalty program? Is it take some work on your part to get them to sign up?
Yeah, it does. So we certainly, if you come in as a guest and you make a booking as a guest, we'll remind you what the value you could be earning at the end of your purchase, but we don't force enrollment, or we don't automatically enroll. And so then we have some join or some acquisition-based campaigns that run after that. So we are still, I will tell you, our percentage, one of the key metrics we look at is the percentage of the aircraft. If you think we have about 143 seats on the airplane, what percentage of the aircraft is filled with members? Right, that's an important thing we look at. Where we still haven't recovered yet. I guess some of that is a symptom of we're acquiring or we're flying new members, but so we're constantly trying to look at. One of our team members here oversees acquisition strategy for us. We're constantly looking for ways to make it easier to join the program. Ours has got a few friction points in it that we're working through. But yeah, it's not an automatic process for us.
It's interesting. And did you have any sense of whether they're loyalty program savvy, or are they completely new travelers who've never played the game before?